Hi and welcome to my PlayHouse, and today we're gonna be messing around with this awesome Lenovo x3650 Model 4. I recently got this server and it hasn't been updated in forever, and well, if you get a new server and you're gonna be playing with it, it's a very good idea to start with giving it a good firmware update. All the stuff that you can update, try to get it up to the latest and the greatest. If you have a working system that is in production and you're relying on it, be a little bit more reserved of updating a working and not failing system. But this one is out of production and is between jobs, therefore it's a really good time to make sure that it's on the latest and the greatest firmware. So we're going to be doing that today, and on this specific model there is a really good reason to do it, because it seems that there's a chip in there that controls the power of the server. It's called the VT261WF chip, and that chip is because of some software bug getting too much power doing boot up, and therefore it can fail on you, and there's a big chance that it will, and they have actually fixed that in firmware. This might be why my server died a couple of years ago. I have no idea if it's related, but I thought that we should just open it up. There should be two of these chips in there. They're tiny and they can be replaced. The firmware will fix the issue if the chip is not ruined, fried, but afterwards, well, the firmware doesn't fix anything. Well, the chip is dead, it's dead and needs replaced, so it's a good thing to do the firmware, because replacing that chip is not easy. See if we can locate that chip. One of the chips, we should be able to see that. The other one should be underneath a heatsink, and there's not a lot of heat sinks in here, so we should probably be able to find it. Yeah, I've been looking for it and I found the visible one is right there. Then there's an invisible one that is underneath a heatsink, and that could very well be this heatsink or maybe this heatsink. I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure if there's any. Well, there is actually a couple of other heat sinks, but well, it could be one of those two. I'm not gonna take off the heat sinks. This server is not broken yet, but that tiny silvery chips there, let's zoom in on that. There, you can kind of see it there. That, well, we have an even better magnifying glass. I don't know if you know this trick, but your phone can often zoom in a lot more. So if we take my phone and we zoom in on that chip down there, okay, there it is. That's not a bad picture. And yeah, that thing has a tendency to break on you doing boot. So yeah, rather important to firmware update this server. People have replaced this one and it did nothing for them, and then they have replaced the hidden one, and that has fixed the issue with a dead Lenovo x3650 Model 4. So yeah, let's firmware update so we don't have to deal with that. It would be a bugger to have to replace that. Okay, so we've moved into the second living room, and kind of knowing that those two chips can well choose to not work at any given time kind of makes you want to reboot this server as little as possible until it has been fully firmware updated. This firmware came last year sometime, so it's fairly new. So if you have a M4, make sure to put that on there so that you don't have to get the tiny little soldering iron out of storage. But we have to go into it, and my plan today is to prepare the server for remote access and then remotely go in and firmware update it. I could just do it from a USB, but well, let's try something different, see if we can get that up and running. So let's power this up. Okay. And by the way, someone asked me in the comments on another server, I think it was the M2 or the M3, if the server ran its power supply fans when it was off, and I didn't have the answer for that, but I could hear on this one, and you could probably as well, that it does actually run the fans when the server is off. but powered. When it is blinking, the IMM is running, and it is ever so slightly running the power supply fan. So it's not completely silent and powered off when it's off. And the server boots. We have a splash screen. I'm waiting for the F1 down here so that I can go into the BIOS. And my plan is to factory default this when I get the chance. And it will go black, and then it will come back, and then we can press F1. I think actually we can press it now. It will react to it, but it comes up and tells us that we can press it as well. That actually it jumped right to. So I'm gonna start by loading default settings. There, if there's something weird configured in this BIOS, I should get rid of it that way. There, that has been loaded. Then I want to go in and configure the IMM, and that is under system settings, and it's under the integrated management module. There, and we will go and reset the IMM to default as well. Enter and enter, and it says that I have some event log that is full. Yes, we're testing the fans. I wonder why. Oh, I do actually know why. That's because it's booting the IMM, and the IMM is in control of cooling the server, and so when it's booting the IMM, it runs the fan full speed, just in case. It has no idea how warm the server is. So if I was in the desert somewhere, it's safer to just run the fans full speed while the IMM doesn't know what it's doing. But as soon as the IMM is up and running and is back in control, it will slow down the fans. So that is why. And it's powering down the fans again. I found the event log, and I'm gonna just clear that. I don't need it. So yeah, fresh event log, and escape from there. And then we are gonna go and we're gonna configure our IMM, because I just defaulted, which will also reset any passwords if if there's management password set in the IMM. That will now be cleared. So let's go in network configuration here. Everything is cleared. Right now it's taking a DHCP address with failover, so I can go and configure some address if that's what I want. I want to disable IP version 6, not gonna be needing that. We want to give it a name. The new x3650 Model 4. There, that's a good name. And we can choose to have a static IP. So let's just do that. Just give it something. Unfortunately, you have to do that over. It would be nice if it would remember what you had already typed in there. I have to come up with some address that I don't think is in use anywhere. 48. I'm pretty sure that's not being used. There. It still says that the lock is full. Guess it hasn't noticed that I've deleted it. Here we can save the network settings. That's a good idea. It will take a minute to save that. These are the default settings, so it might be favorable to go in here and configure what mode we want this to run in. There is a minimum power, efficiency favor power, efficiency favor performance, custom settings, and maximum performance. Maximum performance is what you would need in a production environment when you just want this server to be put out maximum. Well, it's kind of in the name, just give you maximum performance. You might want other things like favor power. I might put that in my data center where I have to pay for the power. It might be a good option for me. Just gonna leave it as is as of now. That's not what this video is about. So let's head out. Let's save settings again and go to the computer and see if we have access. We moved into the computer. I can see the server from here, but well, for gaining access to your IMM, I can recommend using Internet Explorer. And that's why you keep that one around, because that's probably the only thing I ever use it for. And we just pop in the IP number of that there. See something and it tells us that this is very dangerous, so we'll have to tell it to go ahead. Yes, it's fine. And it finds the IMM here. So we're gonna try and log in, and as we have returned to factory default, the username here is user ID, capital letters, and the password is password with an 0 instead of the O, but big letters. And we'll see if we get in. We should. And we now should get in. It takes a bit. There we are. Just for curiosity, when you get a new server and it's an IBM/Lenovo like this, you are curious to see what license has been installed on it. What did you get? Because we need the remote access. Oh, where is the licensing? Am I blind? Activation key management, sorry. We have IBM Integrated Management Module Advanced Upgrade. Good, we needed that. Otherwise we're not going to be able to do a remote console from here and into the server and provide the ISO file for it to boot off to do the firmware upgrade. So we needed that, cool. If you don't have this, it's possible to get a, I believe it's a 90-day trial up at IBM/Lenovo's site. You just search for Lenovo/IBM FOD key, and you can get a feature on demand key to do this for, I think it's 90 days. You can buy these, they're pretty expensive. And for a used server like this, it might cost as much as the server. So let's go back. And we can start up the remote console, remote control it says. We get different options. We can use ActiveX client. That might be good. It says down here that our Java was blocked because of blah blah blah. We can run it this time, cool. There we are. It complains a little bit more about Java. We're gonna allow. Oh, and every time it takes a war. So let's try the ActiveX here and see if we can start. When you start the remote console, there's a single user mode and there's a multi-user mode. It's only me here, so I'm just gonna go for the single user mode, but if you're multiple people doing remote control into a server like this, well, the multi-mode is preferable. So let's see how far we get here. This is the really difficult part when you get a new server. It's rather buggy, but it works. It helps a little bit when we get all the firmware updated because they have improved on this. But as of right now, we are up and running. So now we just need the ISO file to actually do the update. So as this is an older server by now, and this server was, well, it's aced just when the server division from IBM was sold to Lenovo. It's kind of a server that falls between two chairs. I keep a good supply of BOMCs. This is the software that manages all the firmware updating, and I have some really old ones that will work on the very old IBM stuff and some newer ones that will work on the newer stuff. But let's have a look at this. If we go to Lenovo's page and find the system x3650 Model 4, it's right here. And also we can get some help from IBM. And sometimes one of them is better than the other one, and sometimes you will have to look at, well, the network drivers might be better here, and the rate controller might be better on Lenovo's side. So it changes all the time. So it's a bit iffy with these systems that are just in that period of time where those two giant companies were doing this business. Well, let's try and see. If you go with the Lenovo, you go down here and there is the X-Clarity Essential Bootable Media Creator. And if you press that, you go onto a page with the newest boot media creator. It tells us that this is not compatible with the server that we want to use, even though if we go down here and we click IBM systems, Well, it's on the list here. Where is it? It's right there. But we might have to go with an older version. Okay, so I got curious. Does this work or does it not work? So, and I have on my computer, I have done some Lenovo tests. So let's see. I just downloaded this one. You can see the date that's from, well, right now. The other ones are older. So let's try and run this one. Run as admin. And it wants that one, okay. And it starts up this DOS thing. And it starts up the program. So let's see if we can pick the server. Next from here, let's find the server. That's an IBM server that we need. Is it in the list? 950. It's right there. So that should be good. We can update the list if there are some servers that is not there. And we think they might have come in. But let's go next. We want to update. We can enable this task to auto run so we don't have to do as much. We are fine full. Let's just do the update. Okay, then we can pick to have a update express system pack, which is something that they have looked at and make sure that everything works together, or we can use the latest and greatest individual updates. I think we're gonna go for that one. Next, and next, and the working directory, that is good enough. Next, then we are gonna create an ISO file. So we're gonna call this something meaningful. And I'm just gonna make sure that I don't have a file already called that. That's all good. We don't want it in that directory though, so we're just gonna put it there. Go on that. Next. Summary. Next. Let's see if it does that. So after it recognized all those things that it needed, it's going up and it's downloading those. Some of that it already had in the directory, so those it does not have to download again. It kind of downloads 2 at a time, and then it has 2 in queue, actually 3 it seems. And yeah, this takes a bit, so we'll get back when it's done downloading. So in the IMM we can kind of see what firmware we already have in here, and it is dated. The diagnostic tool is from 2013. Well, there's a primary and there's a secondary IMM firmware. The primary is from 2016, and then there's the Wi-Fi firmware that's from 15, and the backup is from 12. So there is nothing wrong with updating this server. It could probably need a good update. Okay, cool, it's done. Let's next, and it's kind of just finish and exit. Yes, we did that. So let's see if we have a new ISO file. There, we have an ISO file right there that we can boot off. Let's see if we can make that happen. Open our remote thingy here. It has kicked me off because I've been inactive. So we need to mount our ISO file. We can use this ActiveX, and then we can start the single user again. It opens this window that we can't close, but we can minimize it. And over on the other screen it did open this one. Up here we have virtual media. There's an option to create an image, or we can activate. So we're gonna start by activating that, which is really weird, but you need to activate it, and then we can select a device to mount. We do that, add image, and then we can search for our image. It's under my computer, and there's some stuff that I have to allow. C drive, there is our image. Awesome. Open that, mapped, mount selected. There, and it kicked us in the meanwhile. That's unfortunate. But let's see if we can't do this. We have our ISO file connected, so let's try and boot the server by exiting the BIOS. Do you want to exit? Yes. Then it will try to boot the server, and we will intervene. Boot using F12. You can hear the server in the background booting. So now it has the splash screen, and now I should be able to, if the mouse is in there, press F12 and it will register that, and when it gets far enough it will make sure that I get in and I can select my boot device. There, it already knows that F12 has been selected, so we can go and pick our DVD drive. There, IMM1, pick that one, and it should boot our BOMC ISO file, and we should get some new firmware. There, it's booting that. It took so long that I was getting nervous, but it did eventually. Oh, it's sharpen up. That's some really small text. Let's get to it when it has loaded. It has loaded, so now we can begin. That's some of the stuff that you can avoid if you use the unattended version, where well, it will more or less update the server all by itself. But yeah, it will look at the updates available and updates on the server, and it should start doing something about it. Okay, it looked through all the firmware and it found some stuff that it's gonna be updating. So I'll just help it by press next. Update, yes. It's kind of weird, all the buttons you have to press here. They could have made that less. And this is what is going to be updating: the Wi-Fi, the dynamic system analyzing, that's the diagnostic software. And then there is some online SAS SATA hard drive and server RAID and the integrated management module. Cool, let's have that complete. So as you can probably hear, because well, the server is right in there, it's very noisy right now, and that's because it's updating the IMM, and while it's doing that, it does not know what it's doing, so it's noisy. So while updating, it kicked me, so let's log in again and let's try and use the right password. And when I got back in, it had completed. Actually, it just completed when I got in here. I didn't catch that, but it's now completed. So we're gonna go next and we're gonna finish, and it's gonna be exiting. The server will probably reboot now, and we should have some new firmware. We could try and see if it sees any of the new firmware already. The BIOS firmware is new and the IMM firmware is new, so okay, it does actually see some new firmware. Firmware update is successful. Restart OS. Okay, so that's what it's doing now. Something to keep in mind when you have just updated a server with new firmware like this one is that it boots a few times when it the first time takes use of this new firmware. It boots up and it checks the firmware, and it boots up and it checks the firmware and the RAM and all of that good stuff. I think it does it 3 times to make sure that everything is as it should be. After that, it should be quicker again. If you just go and pull the power off a server, it will kind of do the same thing. It want to check if everything is as it should be. So right now it's doing a couple of power cycles, making sure that everything is good, and then at some point it will actually boot up. You get very nervous when you have just firmware updated your server and it boots and it boots and it boots, and at that point you are ready to cry your eyes out, but it will eventually just start up. It booted. I asked it to go into the BIOS because I haven't configured any operating system on it yet. There is an operating system, but I don't have access to it. We're gonna delete that in an upcoming video. Let's just check the firmware again. There, we have the firmware. The DSA is still old, 2014, but the IMM2 is brand new and the UEFI is brand new. So awesome. Okay, so we got that solved without any bigger issues. That's nice. So now this server should be okay to run for years to come without crashing and burning off chips on the system board, which would be really annoying. If I could just ask you to give this video a little like, that would help a lot. And now that you're done watching, go check out my little shop, see if I have anything that you might be missing. It would be very nice to get rid of all of the surplus of hardware that I have laying around and is constantly trying to sell you. So thank you very much for watching my videos. Do subscribe to my channel so that you can see me again, and have a really nice day. Bye bye.